Hey everyone, today I'm going to take this little juniper whip and show you guys how to get it on its way to looking like that little tree. This guy's about 6 years old and been working on it pretty much constantly since it was a cutting. So these are a couple of the first steps. This cutting, I took the cutting in September. It's now January, and it's already got some roots on it. It was on a heat mat. You can see that this is a relatively strong shoot for a Kishu Juniper, and this was cut off of a strong parent tree that was growing in the ground. So it had a lot of energy, and it immediately sent out all these nice roots. So I'm not going to touch the roots right now. All I'm going to do is put a piece of wire on here and give it some bends. So the easiest time to do this is to do it when you're transferring things from a common flat or something like that, when you have nothing inside the soil. And that's because you can see the whole thing. You can see I've got one here that's not wired, that's in a container, and I'm going to do that also here in a second. But I'm using silver, like non-anodized aluminum wire here. I like using bright silver wire for young trees because it reminds me, I can see the wire very easily. It reminds me that I might need to take it off or at least check it. So I've got the wire on there in a 45-degree spiral basically, and then I'm going to use it to put some movement in this. I want to start all the way down here by the roots, and if the roots are not all at the same level, which would be desirable, but we're just going to live with that for now, and we're going to come back and correct the root base later. But I want to start by putting movement even down as low as the first root. When you're dealing with small compositions, you don't have any space to waste, and so I want to start right from the base, and I want to both add movement to it, but I also want to add a twist to it because that's what allows us to make some really interesting shape as the plant starts to mature. So I make a first bend, kind of holding it like this over my finger, and then make a second bend. So now I have sort of a 90-degree angle. The reason to do that is that it provides me the leverage I need in order to be able to twist this. So I can kind of start to bring this around in a circle. And you can see I just did a full twist there. But most of that twist happened in this section, and I want to see if I can get a little bit of it down here. So I'm going to put a little kink there. The closer you can get the twists to the base, the smaller the tree that you can make. And you want to continue making some sort of interesting line as you go upward, but it's likely that if you're going to make a tiny tree out of this, that you might end up just ginning part of that. But it's better to have a crooked gin than to have a straight one, which is kind of this kind of thing. This was all wired to create that interesting gin that's at the top. So now we have a wired juniper cutting here. You can see that there's a lot of sort of crazy movement. I'm probably looking at the front just because of the trunk movement going away and then coming back towards, which is kind of hard to see in video. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stick this in a container just like this. I'm not going to anchor it in the container or anything like that. I'm just going to hold this so the roots are dangling, and I'm going to pot it up with a little bit of perlite and peat moss. I use both perlite and peat moss as well as perlite and coco coir. I prefer coco a little bit over peat moss, but they're roughly equivalent. And I'm gonna bury the root base a little bit here to give it a little bit more stability. You can also leave a tail on the wire down into the soil to provide that stability for the cutting in the growing container. Now I'm probably going to leave it in here for at least a year, if not 2 or 3 years, to get bigger and just keep an eye on the wire.